Watch this.
After 42 days of a shutdown, the government could soon open up. Congressman Mike Simpson said lawmakers didn't win anything, except a reminder that locking down doesn't help anyone. She joined the Army in 1964 when women weren't supposed to be anywhere near a battlefield. But that didn't stop one Idaho woman from serving in Vietnam, doing work so secret, she still can't talk about it.
There's been a number of things with me there's no explanation for, other than something that I was exposed to.
Just like hundreds of thousands of others who were told the weed killer was harmless. But Agent Orange was just one more thing Vietnam vets brought home with them, and they're still dealing with it today. We are expecting a vote at, any moment from the House side of Congress on reopening the federal government. A simple majority in the House and a signature by the president, and the funding bill would end the longest shutdown in the nation's history. But that's not the only big news coming out of D.C. There's a new House member being sworn in that could lead to the release of the Epstein files, a full release, that is, which the country got another teaser of today with the release of a Jeffrey Epstein email chain that specifically mentions President Trump and his connection to the convicted sex offender. Idaho Congressman Mike Simpson, who navigated his way through the nation's delaying airports, made it all the way to D.C. for the funding vote, made some time for Joe Paris today to talk about all of it.
Close to a deal on Capitol Hill on day 42 and counting of the federal government shutdown.
We'll have an hour debate on the rule, vote on the rule. If that passes, which I assume it will, then we'll take up the CR and pass it.
Idaho Congressman Mike Simpson has remained working in D.C. in recent weeks.
Excited to get it passed. We spent, 5 weeks now, 6 weeks in an unnecessary, what I call a stupid Schumer shutdown. It was all unnecessary. I don't know what they were after, what they were hoping to accomplish with this shutdown. What they did is cause a lot of pain for the American people. And I'm excited to get it back open and let us start doing our job again, start working on our appropriation bills.
There are questions from Republicans and Democrats about what was accomplished from a shutdown. Democrats were holding out for extensions to the Affordable Care Act, but a swing in votes from select Dems who moved on from the topic as a condition to reopen the government.
They settled for the same deal that Senator Thune offered them the first week of the shutdown. And so, yeah, I'm kind of looking at it going, so what did you win in this? And I hope that everybody learned that, as I've said many, many times, shutting down the government is never good policy and it's never good politics.
With the government set to reopen, business continues on a variety of topics, including the release of more files related to Jeffrey Epstein. This afternoon, a newly sworn-in member of Congress became the final necessary signature on a petition that would require the Justice Department to release all unclassified documents related to Epstein's sex trafficking operation.
I want the public to have as much information as is reasonable, as long as we protect the identity of the victims in this process. And however we have to do that, I'm not trying to protect anybody that was involved in the abuse of these women or anything like that. But getting the information out is more complicated than just saying, here it all is, go after it, And that's the concern I have with what the Democrats are trying to do with the discharge petition, is it would just pretty much release everything. And that's not the right way to do it. Let's do it through the regular legislative process. And we've got committees that are working on that right now.
Of note, this afternoon, House Republicans released 23,000 pages of new documents from the Jeffrey Epstein estate. Some made headlines early today, implications about President Trump and Epstein's relationship, drawing questions, too, if the president knew about crimes with young girls. Brian, in terms of the conversation about refunding the government, at this point in time, they're going through some procedural votes, and then there is allowed extended debate on the floor for that CR, that continuing resolution. If it is approved by Congress tonight, the president would sign it to put it into effect, and it only goes through January 31st. So I asked the congressman if he thinks that we're, in line for another shutdown February 1st. He doesn't think so, but it is a very political heavy
Anything's
time.
possible.
Anything's possible.
All right, 5:15 is when they're supposed to do that vote. Is that correct? All right.
Yep.
We'll pay attention. Thanks, Joe. 44,000 Idahoans are Vietnam veterans. On Monday, in honor of Veterans Day, we heard from 4 of them. Their memories, we also heard their trauma. But the story of one Idaho veteran reminds us not everyone who served in Vietnam carried a rifle. Elaine James was among the very few women who served in country, not as a nurse, but in military intelligence. As Hunter Funk explains, it's a job that kept her close to the truth and to the secrets she still carries with her today.
I joined the Army to go to the laboratory technology program at Walter Reed, but I never got there.
Never got there because Elaine James was meant to do something rare for women at the time. She enlisted in the Army in 1964. Her path took her to officer candidate school, graduated in 1965, and was commissioned the second lieutenant in the Army. After being stationed in several states.
Then I went to Vietnam. There were two people waiting for me. And you get off the plane and there's a smell that you don't forget, and it's hot.
In a war where the stories we hear are often about the frontline combat or hospital ward, her work was one we don't often hear about.
I worked for the Chief of Intelligence. I did secret stuff.
During the Vietnam War, Army military intelligence primarily focused on collecting and analyzing information to support combat, including decoding messages and gathering reconnaissance data.
During the whole time of Vietnam, there were only between maybe 500 to 700 women who went in all the services who were not nurses.
It was crucial intelligence for tactical decision-making.
You saw what was going on in real time, not what was on the news, not what was finagled with. You saw what was really going on. And sometimes it would just make you sick. A lot of sad things, you know. You could see little kids sleeping on the streets. You had to be very careful, though, because you couldn't accept drinks or accept anything that they're trying to hand you. It might be a bomb.
She won't, and often can't, talk about specifics.
No, I can't really talk about any of that, even now.
Much of it remains classified, and she has to keep it quiet. But what she doesn't keep quiet is the after effects from Vietnam.
I came back very depressed, I don't know, for probably 15 years, I just thought I was crazy. I didn't realize I had PTSD. And I know that people say that, oh, you can cure it, you can get over it. You don't ever get over it, you know. You go through the depression, the anxiety, the survivor's guilt. It takes a long time to understand and to deal with it. And it's just something that you live with forever.
Elaine's military career didn't end in Vietnam. She served on active duty and in the reserves for more than 3 decades, helping plan for conflicts in the Middle East and Far East, and watched opportunities open up for women in service that were barely imaginable when she enlisted.
You weren't raised to know these things. This is back in the days where women did not have the opportunities to do the things that they do today. For instance, at that time, there were no female pilots in the military. There were so many areas that there just were not any spaces available. It was just not allowed. And it's so wonderful to see what so many of them are doing. I look at people like Colonel Washington at the Idaho National Guard. She's just so excellent, you know. And I look at what she has accomplished and what she's doing, and what an example she is for young women. And so many women that you can see doing extraordinary things.
Extraordinary things, just like what Elaine did in her more than 35 years of service. You heard the Vietnam veterans who came home to anger even being spat on after asking Elaine about that experience when returning back. She says she knows people who went through that, but her experience was a bit different. She didn't face open hostility. She says instead she was ignored because most women at the time weren't expected to serve in ways that she did.
Wow, I mean, that's an amazing career, an amazing story.
Yeah.
It's just crazy to me, though, when she still talks about the classified information. Stuff gets released,
yes,
and has been over the years, but there's still stuff she can't talk about.
Yeah,
that's
she has
amazing.
to keep that in.
Yeah, that's amazing. All right, thank you very much, Hunter, for bringing that to us. Well, it took everything we had to fit our Vietnam Veterans Day story into Monday's show, and that's why it's kind of spilled over into today. But in doing so, we didn't have time to share some of your comments. So we wanted to do that today. Kind of what we got in response to those stories. And they're pretty powerful, like Dale in Boise. He's at a loss for words when it comes to honoring the service of our 4 Vietnam veterans. He thanks them for sharing their stories, says he is humbled. Meanwhile, Jan in Boise grew up with the draft of her high school friends. She said the stories of our 4 veterans touched her, and she shed some tears while watching that. Thanks so much for your veteran stories. That one is from Cecil in Meriden. She said her husband was a Vietnam veteran who passed away 10 years ago from complications of Alzheimer's. The last years of his life were filled with a continuous loop of stories, she says, of his war buddies, as they should be. Finally, we had this one from Steve, who's an Air Force veteran from Vietnam. From 1968, he thanks his colleagues for their courage, sacrifice, and service, upholding the values and the military oath, which keeps our freedoms strong, he says. Rich Porter, the Marine we spoke with, and shared his story on Monday. He told us he was back home in California 3 days after his last firefight. That's how quickly they had to transition. And it took him 2 weeks to be able to even sleep inside the house, another week or so to sleep in a bed. Big crowds, loud sounds, fireworks. Many Vietnam vets still can't deal with some of that. But those types of reactions, that's not all they brought back with them. According to Lisa here, she says, I see my dad in these men. He served as a Marine in Vietnam, was exposed to Agent Orange. Thank you for sharing their stories. I'm sorry for all the suffering and grateful for their sacrifices, she says. Meanwhile, we got this other message from Rebecca in Garden City. It says the veteran stories were heartbreaking and have so many raw emotions from service in Vietnam. Meanwhile, her classmates went, some didn't return. Many, though, did return. Like her cousin, Lee Ostrom, came back with diseases from exposure to toxic chemicals. Said her cousin died too early from Agent Orange exposure. So we're sad to hear that. But that does bring us to what else we couldn't fit into Monday's stories. Agent Orange, the use of chemical herbicides in Vietnam and Southeast Asia goes back to January of 1962. That's when the U.S. Air Force launched Operation Ranch Hand. The goal was to thin out the jungles where the enemy would hide and destroy enemy farmland to, well, starve them out. During Ranch Hand's first 3 years, they sprayed more than 1 million gallons of what they called the rainbow herbicides. That would be Agents Green, Pink, Purple, and Blue. The name coincided with the color striped on the barrel. But things ramped up when Agent Orange was introduced. In 1965, Operation Ranch Hand added Agent Orange, and it quickly became the agent color of choice. An equal mix of 2 weed killers, 2,4-D and 2,4,5-T, both of which were used by American farmers at the time. But that last defoliant, the 2,4,5-T, well, that is an environmental pollutant, meaning its ingestion is toxic. Yet American servicemen were told it was harmless. In fact, Army manuals given to soldiers, the guys on the ground getting Agent Orange dumped on them, the manuals claimed the herbicide was, quote, relatively non-toxic to man or animals, end quote. So people took few precautions with it. During peak use years of 1967, 68, and 69, the Air Force would spray an average of 3 undiluted gallons of Agent Orange per acre. By the time Operation Ranch Hand ended in 1971, Agent Orange accounted for more than 11 million gallons of the nearly 19 million gallons of herbicide sprayed over 12,000 square miles of Southeast Asia. Then, in February 1970, the New Yorker magazine published an article that showed the concentration of that dioxin, the 2,4,5-T, being sprayed in Vietnam. It was 13 times higher than what was allowed in the United States. A concentration that showed a higher chance of birth defects in mice and rats. The use of Agent Orange was stopped in April of 1970, but the spraying missions continued until 1971 with Agent White. It's assumed by the Department of Veterans Affairs that of the 2.7 million service members who served in Vietnam from 1965 to 1971, Some, if not all, were exposed to Agent Orange in some way. A few years after the conclusion of the conflict, veterans and their families started noticing they were getting illnesses and diseases without an explanation.
You know, my fight with Agent Orange has been fierce. Cancers, heart attacks. Third heart attack in March. Put from the fourth stent, this was a 39 millimeter long stent down the front of my heart.
It's all because of Agent Orange?
Yes, Agent Orange related, direct cause. You know, they finally figured it out because they were having a whole bunch of people that were showing these symptoms and this kind of stuff from them. They didn't know why. And common denominator, we were all Vietnam vets and we'd all been exposed to Agent Orange.
They know about my medical issues. They know about my heart condition, all the Agent Orange side effects I have, my lungs, the breathing issues I have, the sleep disorders I have, all those. They know about all that. They know because they know about all the medications and stuff I take. You know why we're on anxiety, depression medication, and why we're on nightmare medication. You know,
which is worse, the physical harms that you carry or the mental ones?
Me, I think it's the physical ones. You know, the mental ones, yeah, I deal with those and this kind of stuff. Yeah, I sit and cry in early mornings and this kind of stuff. But the physical ones have been devastating. Of course, old age isn't real fun either. So, but you throw in, you know, I have, you know, they didn't tell you about, you know, peripheral neuropathy. You know, I start losing sensation in both legs above my knees. You know, I had to have gastrocnemius revisions done on both ankles. Why to have tears in both Achilles at the same time? You know, they don't know for sure all the things that Agent Orange did to us. And rather than, this is the thing that probably irritates me the most, sir, the fact that rather than standing up and taking care of us, they shoved it under the rug, and how many tens of thousands of us died from it, you know, or still dying from it. You know, the things, the cancers, you can't get away from them.
According to the Department of Veterans Affairs, about 300,000 Vietnam veterans have died from diseases related to Agent Orange exposure. That's nearly 5 times the number of service members killed in action in Vietnam. However, it took a call to a VA hospital in Chicago in 1977 for a claims rep to start putting the two together. A vet's wife said it was, quote, the chemicals in Vietnam, end quote, that killed her husband. So the claims rep looked into it, and she took her research to the media. Well, she was then fired in 1983 for conduct unbecoming of a federal employee. And the VA continued to deny all claims of dioxin poisoning. But soon, more Vietnam veterans took their stories public, touting hypothyroidism, cancers of all kinds, and Parkinson's disease. Lawsuits followed, but the VA still took the same stance they have since 1978. Quote, there's no positive evidence for effects, dangerous effects, on the health of individuals exposed to these herbicides, which is of a permanent nature, end quote. But behind the scenes, they were tracking it. Then in 1990, studies by the VA and the CDC determined some cancers, like non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and soft tissue sarcomas, they were indeed connected to exposure to Agent Orange. The day after those results were released, the VA secretary classified each illness as service-connected for Vietnam vets. And that ultimately led to the Agent Orange Act, signed by President George Bush in February of 1991, which made Vietnam veterans exposed to the herbicide eligible for certain benefits to treat their illnesses. And since then, the list of presumptive conditions has lengthened to nearly 24 health conditions and diseases. From 1977 up to 2013, the VA had processed 230,000 claims for Agent Orange exposure. Then came the PACT Act, which was passed in 2022, which widened the chemical exposure to burn pits and other deployments. And since then, more than 1 million claims have been filed. Of the 44,000 Vietnam veterans in Idaho, according to the Department of Veterans Affairs, there have been more than 11,500 exposure claims filed under the PACT Act. Still, who knows how many more it could have been had the leaders of this country, as Terry just put it, stood up and took care of the veterans instead of shoving it under the rug for decades.
One of the oldest college basketball rivalries in Idaho returns tonight. It is the College of the Idaho Yotes versus NNU Nighthawks, better known as the Mayor's Cup. The game tips off tonight at 7 p.m. You can watch the whole thing on KTVB Plus and 24/7. Boise State is headed down to San Diego to take on San Diego State this weekend for the top of the Mountain West Conference. And our Jordan Smith is headed there with the team with live coverage. Join us for our Bronco Roundup game day show Saturday at 9 a.m. right here on Channel 7. And then we will also be live from the field an hour before kickoff with the latest ahead of the game. That show will start at 7:30 and you can watch on KTVB Plus, download on your TV, and watch for free. And if you want to look for more information on Saturday's game, you can text 208-321-5614 and we'll send you a link to the game day guide straight to your phone where you can find information on the matchup, where to watch, and more. Front Street Fights is returning to the Idaho Central Arena Friday night. Idaho's own Andrew Cruz steps into the cage to defend the featherweight title against Spokane challenger Daree Alderman in the main event of Front Street Fights 33, 7 p.m. this Friday. The event is packed with hometown heroes as top local pros and rising amateur stars aim to take their mark in front of the always electric Idaho Central Arena crowd. You can stream the fights for free on KTVB Plus. That's the 401 on the 208. I'm Richard Rodriguez.
All right, KR would like to point out that, well, Agent Orange just didn't affect the veterans, but also their children. Don't forget they're passing it down to their children, and it also causing autoimmune disorders. However, the VA won't recognize any of it. That's not true. If you have a qualifying birth defect, they do. Look into it.
Continue with us and watch free now on the KTVB Plus app everywhere you stream.